at a few topics which had been given to us as the speakers. And I just zoomed into one which I'm sure that is more within the mandate of EXA, which is that one of professional registration. So in terms of the work that I do at EXA, I'm responsible for education/accreditation, professional registration of engineers, as well as continuous professional development. So it's actually all aspects of work that EXA is responsible for, which are the core functions. I'm not sure, so that I can be able to, by way of example, give you what I think might be relevant to you. Can I just see by the show of hands, how many of you are actually registered with EXA? Oh, okay. No, that's good. I can see that some are registered, some are not. So it means that my presentation might be balanced, because then it's going to cover both. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I must indicate that I've been given 10 minutes. But my slides here, I think they are around 20 or so. And I will try to summarize them as much as I can. So the work that we do at EXA is a legislative mandate, which is encapsulated in the legislation. For those of you that are registered, and those of you who are not registered, they must be mindful of that. So in terms of the constitution of the country, so it says that every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely, and the practice of trade, occupation, or profession may be regulated by law. So that is in terms of the constitution. So it is a constitutional mandate that we are responsible for. That is why we are regulating the engineers. It is because of that spirit and the letter of the Constitution that then there was the emergence of the Engineering Professions Act, which is number 46 of 2000. So as EXA, the tool that we use, of course, to regulate the profession, it is that one of legislation. That is the tool that we use to regulate the profession. There is no other tool. Even the accreditation that we do of various universities, it is the accreditation of universities for registration. So, but at the epicenter of the work that EXA does is just registration. So that's what we are responsible for. So we must keep the register of all the engineers that are there across the length and the breadth of the country. So this is a value proposition, the value chain, I beg your pardon, that we are using in regulating the profession. It first starts with the policy standards and procedure development. So one of our mandates is to develop standards as well as to come up with policies that we are going to use to regulate the profession. And the standards and the policies that we use are not only locally benchmarked, but they are also internationally benchmarked against other countries of the world. And as a result of that, we are members of a number of international bodies and their courts. We are the member of the Washington Accord, which is the accord of a number of countries of the world that have signed up to that particular accord to deal with issues of engineering. Dublin Accord as well as the Sydney Accord. And those two accords are the accords that we have signed up to internationally to ensure that we are part and parcel of what is happening internationally around issues of technologists as well as technicians. So therefore, those standards that we actually come up with and policies, they've been benchmarked with international standards. So then after the policy has been developed, then we register all the engineers, we do accreditation. Accreditation is a quality assurance function, and then we have to manage the professional conduct of all the engineers in the country. And then it is incumbent upon us to ensure that all those engineers, they continuously develop themselves. So that's why we've got what is called the CPD. I'm sure those that are registered are familiar with that, but those that have not yet registered, so those are things that they must take note of. And it is also not surprising to me that some of you are not registered. And there are so many across the length and the breadth of the country that are not registered. Some are registered, some are not. And why is that? It is because registration is not compulsory in terms of the Engineering Professions Act. But those who happen to be registered, we do regulate those who happen to be registered with us. And of course, there are benefits to be registered here. I will just touch on a few things which we think are critical for the engineers to register. And as the mouthpiece of the council, I also want to whet the appetite of prospective engineers to see a need to register with the Engineering Council. You know, when I travel all over the world, I get intrigued, excited, and amused by a number of structures and the architecture that I see all over the world. Some of them they look like this, and I always marvel at the work that is done by the engineers. So if you see what I've put in there, I was just trying to indicate, to say, without the engineers, in the country or all over the world, we would not have such beautiful structures like those particular ones. So as EXA, then we have this mandate of registration where we've got a number of categories against which we register engineers. We've got what is called the professionals. So once you have graduated at university, it is expected that you first must register as a candidate. After that, you must graduate up to the level of professional status. So that's why under professional there you will see that we register professional engineers, technologists, certificated engineers, and technicians. As well as in terms of the candidates, we do register candidates for the same categories. But on top of the professionals and candidates, we also have a category that is called specified categories. From time to time, the industry does come to us and say, you know what, we have looked at your legislation. There are certain aspects of, there are certain categories of engineers which we cannot see in your legislation. So why don't you do something and make us to be part of your group of engineers that are regulated? So in most cases, we put those under the specified categories. So those that have approached us already, we've got those categories: the lift inspectors, the lift machinery inspectors, the medical equipment maintenance, fire protection. So this list is going to be increasing and increasing depending on who has approached us to say, you know what, we also want to be regulated. I'm sure you know there are so many people outside, across the length and the breadth of the country who call themselves engineers. Some are sound engineers, efficient engineers. And I learned last week, I attended a graduation at the Valley University of Technology. They are talking about tissue engineers. Tissue engineers are those engineers who are responsible for fixing people's tissues, so the ligaments in the body for people that are aging. So they've come up with that term, tissue engineers, just to assist people not to age fast. So there's something that they are coming up with, and then they were saying to us, no, you must consider also registering the tissue engineers. So there's quite a number of them, that are out there in the country. But at this juncture, these are the only ones that we are regulating. But it doesn't mean that we cannot actually regulate, we cannot register more. Without the engineers, these will be the disasters. Without the engineers. A very important one is that one. You see that bridge that has been broken into two pieces. And there are a number of other bridges that you know of that have fallen, and people have been asking us to say, are there standards in this country if there are certain bridges that are collapsing, certain malls that are collapsing and stuff like that? So what is then of critical importance is that in an actual fact, engineering as a profession must be properly regulated. There must be consistency of standards so that we don't have those bridges crumbling. Because some of those engineers that are involved in terms of the investigations that we do, it doesn't mean that some of them are registered with CESA. Some of them are not registered at all. But then, for your information, we are not accountable for those that are not registered with CESA. We are only responsible for those that are registered with CESA. But it would be nice at some point to get to a point where everybody is actually registered. Code of conduct. That is at the center of the registration, because all people that are registered with CESA, they are guided, then they must do everything in accordance with the code of conduct. So therefore, if there is a breach that is collapse and so forth, then it is incumbent upon CESA to go there and investigate if firstly some of those people were registered with CESA, and if the engineering work that they've conducted it in accordance with the CESA standards and policies, and whether there's been no chicanery or misconduct in the manner in which they've conducted their engineering work. Without any regulation, you see that chaos. I'm sure you are familiar with this chaos. You have even seen it in Parliament. It goes without saying that without the code of conduct, you will see people dealing with each other in the manner in which those guys are dealing with each other there. And then a lot of bridges will collapse, and then there will be lack of quality in the work, and then also without any proper regulation, there is no guarantee that there is competency in the engineering profession. I think where it is known that these people are registered with CESA, we can guarantee issues of competency, we can guarantee that these people are actually professional through the code of conduct, and then they are actually complying with our own standards that we have set, and then there is going to be quality in the work that they do. So this is the model that we follow, which is a professional development model. So for those who have already been registered, I'm sure they are familiar with this, to say, as I said, that the work that we do, we start with the accreditation, which is at the bottom. It is only people that have gone through the accredited programs. Then those people are expected, after graduating, then to register as candidates. And we call that stage one. Stage one is where people have undergone university training, they have obtained their graduation certificates or qualifications. After that, then they must then register as candidates. But then, as a minimum, for a period of 3 years after graduating at university, they must do the on-the-job training, they must acquire experience within the workplaces, they must operate under the supervision of the registered professionals, under the supervisors, and then also supported by the employers to ensure that they can migrate from the candidate status to the professional status. And that is what we call stage 2. So it is through the training and the experience, as well as proof that they've actually acquired that experience and training, that we can be able to register them as professional engineers. And then after they've been registered, then the sky is the limit. Actually, the sky is the home of the engineers, because we expect them then to attend continuous professional development so that they can continuously develop themselves. You remember, there are many things that happen, and then there's new knowledge, new technology, new ways of doing things, and then they must always upskill themselves. So that's why they must attend the CPD. So at the point when they are registered, that's where we expect them then to observe the code of conduct and then to maintain their competency and to pay the fees. Yeah, they must pay the fees. All right. Even though that is important, but I'm not just emphasizing it here. What is important is that there is a process there is a continuum of development from candidates then to professional status, and then the sky is the limit. So those are the requirements for those who are not registered. In order for you to register as a candidate engineer, then you must either have a BSc Eng or PEng or PIeng. Candidate technology, you must have a BTech, and then for you to be a candidate certificated engineer, you must have attended the government certificate of competence. There is a number of those government certificates of competence. Some are offered by the Department of, under the auspices of the Department of Labor. Some are even offered under the auspices of the Department of Mineral Resources. Actually, those two departments are involved in the issuance of the government certificates of competence. So if you have got those ones, then you qualify then to register as a professional certificated engineer with the Engineering Council of South Africa. So we are not involved in the education of certificated engineers. That education takes place under the auspices of those two departments, and then once they can prove that they've acquired those, then that's fine. Okay. This area I just want to emphasize because of what I saw on the program, to say it is important for people that are already working within various companies to know that we as EXA, we have got an arrangement which we call commitment and undertaking, in terms of which there must be an agreement between EXA and all the employers that are employing the engineers. So this project or program, we expect it to be signed with EXA so that EXA and that particular employer agree how those candidate engineers then can be upskilled from candidates level up to professional levels. That's where we expect, as a matter of must, in terms of the commitment and undertaking, that the employers must have the supervisors, they must have professional engineers serving as mentors. So it is part of the agreement that we sign. So that I'm not going to touch on, but as a matter of fact, it is important for people to register, because you might have seen a lot of jobs that are being advertised. Actually, you will find that they say that at least you must be registered with a professional body that is authorized. There are many companies that do that, more especially at the municipality, provincial departments, and national government departments, and so that is a requirement. So therefore, for you to be able to be employed in those different spheres of government, so you must actually register with EXA, even though it is not compulsory. But those companies, they've made it mandatory for people to register with EXA. So it serves as a guarantee to the members of the public to say these people that are registered, they can be trusted. It increases public confidence. It inspires confidence. And then there's also marketability and financial gains, I beg your pardon, trust and recognition by peers. The work that we do, it's not us as administration at EXA who do this work. We use yourselves, we use peers across the country actually to do the assessment of the people that are doing engineering. That are applying to be the engineers, so that they can be that trust to say these people have been looked at by their own peers. It's a peer review mechanism of some sort. And also there is international recognition for people that register with us, because in terms of our legislation, in order that there can be mobility of engineers from South Africa to any country, from any country to South Africa, then we must make sure that we register those people, and then they form part of the international register and the national register. And also it ensures that there is public safety. So those are categories that I've spoken about, which I'm not going to talk about. CPD I've touched. I'm trying to race through the 10 minutes that I was given. Currently, so we're standing at about 51,000 people that are registered. Whereas in 2012 we had about 43,000 that were registered. Even though we have had this incremental, this spiral, upward spiral in terms of the number of registered engineers. But it is important to note that South Africa has one engineer for 3,100 people, compared to countries like Germany or other developed countries with one engineer for 200 people. So what does this mean? It means that there is a shortage of engineers in South Africa.
If you become a bit nauseous of what I'll be saying, there's a bag next to you. You can use it. Because I promise you, I will be controversial. So, put on your safety belt. Do not sit back and relax, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. True to form, I will not be talking to everything that that Godfrey asked me to talk to, but I'll focus on procurement. And I also don't know why he called it real radical transformation. Is it not enough to call it radical transformation? Now he calls it real radical transformation. Now he's really getting my engine revving here, okay? How was it done in the good old days? Pre-94. So what happened in our client bodies, we had in-house experienced professionals, we had service providers or those municipalities or client bodies were servicing much smaller communities or smaller population. Because some people existed, others were there, but they didn't really exist. So we're only servicing a certain small portion. And I am led to believe that at that time there was little political interference. I don't believe it, but that's what I've been told. And the professionals at the time, they were nominated or selected from a panel. They didn't tender, they were selected. And the fees that they were paid came from a gazette that they put together as industry. And, you know, it depended on how good your relationship was with the guy that must they nominate you as to how much work you would get from that client body. It sounds like corruption to me, but that's how it happened. And the contractors were lucky in that they got tender documents, well prepared. Remember, the engineers didn't have to do bids. So at the time, they were sitting in their office and they were designing, and the fax machine came through, no email. The fax machine came through, and there was another appointment. And the guys were too scared to go and do marketing because they will get another appointment. So they were staying in the office and they were working. The tenders were price-based, and the invitation was based on, or the adjudication was based on capacity and the relationship with the clients. That's how it happened in the good old days. What were the advantages? Shorter procurement period. You can just imagine. I've got a need, I go to the lists, or I go to my friend, I point him, and he gets going. And you know why that worked well? Because you had an engineer that was assigned to a client body. So that engineer developed the overall master plan for that municipality. There's a company in Namshand, they don't exist anymore, so I can use their name. It was in 1997 when I visited this client to market myself. And lo and behold, when I got back to the office, I received a call from this gentleman from Namshand. And he asked me, who the hell do you think that you can go and talk to my client? But that's how it was. You had clients assigned to professionals. So they knew exactly what the demands were in that client body. So they were able to respond to the exact needs of that client body. And that related to a sustainable, mutually beneficial environment for both client and engineer. But that, as was later pointed out, it resulted in a barrier to entry for new players. So you had fewer companies, but large companies. The advantage of that was that within large organizations you could have research and development, you could have proper training, you could have all the good things that you can imagine that big companies have. Godfrey, you messed up my font. You are fired. So the procurement was not fair, it was not equitable, it was not transparent, competitive, cost-effective. It also resulted in a monopolistic behavior. So if you wanted, in post that period, wanted to go and do a design for a client at the time, you needed to call, I won't use their name again, but you needed to call the consultant of the client to get the as-built drawings. That was how it was. By the way, private sector still procure using that practice. It's still based on relationships. It's not called corruption, it's called relationships. So what happened starting political freedom, democracy? We had the constitution that was put in place. Specifically, section 217 of the Constitution speaks to procurement, and there are the three different sections, and you will always hear black business moaning that the intention of part 3 of that was to support part 2 and not part 1. But what was then developed spoke to part 1 mostly, and only gave 10 or 20% of its attention to part 2. So the importance to use procurement as a tool to correct the past imbalance is definitely enshrined in our Constitution. It's not something that is wrong, it was something that we, our forefathers who drafted this Constitution, felt there's something wrong with how things were done in the past. We need to fix it, and we need to find a tool to fix it. But the balancing act that our government is struggling with is, you want to keep this country sexy for the investors. And there was an agreement signed called the World Trade Organization Government Procurement Agreement to try and ensure that sexiness for the international market. But at the same time, government needed the freedom to use procurement as a policy tool to stimulate economy, protect national industry against foreign competition, to improve competitiveness, certain industrial sectors, to remedy regional disparities, and in addition to that was to implement secondary policies like creation of jobs and whatnot, all the good things. So, this led to the development of all of those policies. And to give effect to section 217, subsection 3 of the Constitution, all of these codes have been developed, regulations have been developed, and I'm bad at taking instructions. And you'll see that as we become a more mature democracy, things change more and more as the challenges are different and people then understand. Let me tell you one thing about black people. There's someone who said, and I won't quote his name, if you want to hide something from a black person, put it in a book. It's a reality. So what's happened in the past is that government goes away with the influence of certain sections of the industry and they develop policies, and black business sit back and they look at this. They don't participate. And then it gets implemented. And then black business say, yo, I didn't see this coming. And then we react. And then we toy. And we go to the sectors and we speak to the powers that be. and there's a change of policy, and we come back and we scream, yo, 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 we won. And then there's somebody sitting in the corner and saying, so how do we find the loophole? And that's how things happen. So the latest that we have, well, let's first look at the procurement scorecard. Godfrey, I'm not impressed with you. The policy tool that's developed should have measurable targets, must be verifiable, auditable, and transparent. And it must be used as a tool that takes place within a competitive environment, so that procurement can to a large extent contribute to the development of growing enterprises that are able to participate equitably in the global economy. That was the intention. Now, if we go back to all those policies, they keep on redrafting and getting changed, because whatever we develop with the intention to achieve that, people go and search for the loophole to circumvent that. So we found that, in particular, that this agreement signed give it better balance, and so there's this pressure group that is putting pressure on government, black people reading a bit more, and we are now looking at closing all those loopholes. So what does the new regulation say, the 2017 regulations? There's two sections. You've got, in terms of the process, legal compliance, there's functionality, you get price and BEE, and then you've got subcontracting, and the second one is where there's a pre-qualification criteria, where the top section is used primarily on contracts more than 30 million and a minimum 30% subcontracting requirement, where subcontracting is to EMEs and QSEs with a minimum of 30% participation, and those must be majority black owned and controlled. And if you look at the pre-qualification criteria, they were looking at stipulating the minimum BEE status, and in some instances reserving it for QSEs and EMEs. The CESA office will tell you they're getting a lot of telephone calls, because now people are saying, but that's discrimination. It's not discrimination. It's empowerment. This is also significant changes in the regulation. Just for your information, the generic code says that EME and a QSE, EME is less than 10 million turnover and a QSE is less than 50 million turnover. The new construction sector charter code that is currently going to Parliament for approval after the mining sector debacle, you'll see that those thresholds are changing from 10 million to 6 million and for QSEs to 25 million. So the regulation will go a long way in creating opportunities for small companies, but I'm afraid if you look at the bigger companies, there's very few of them that don't have a BEE level 2 or better. So I think that what's put together by government will just lead to a further fragmentation of the industry into smaller entities, because you're going to see large companies just spinning out all these smaller entities to stay below the 25 million turnover in order to benefit from automatic qualification. And that's not good for our industry, because the smaller companies you have, the bigger reliance you're going to have on those individuals to do the work. There's going to be no mentoring, no training, no development, and no growth of our industry. And what are you doing? You become part of it and you set up your own company because you also want to benefit from that, with no regard for this industry. I said I'll be radical. No free lunch here. So, the reservation of work. So we all sit here and we cry. But we qualified, we studied so many years, Why are there people who are not professionals getting the work? By the way, the definition of a professional is when you are registered as a professional. If you are not registered as a professional, you are not a professional. By the way, you are a graduate, not a professional. You are an engineer, you are a technician or technologist. Now, if we can't get it right, how can we expect our clients to get it right? Who may do what? So we've got the engineering council that looks at the registrations, and we've got the oath, we've got the code of conduct. But remember, code of conduct applies to those who signed the code of conduct. Code of conduct does not apply to those that didn't sign it. So what? I'm not registered. I'm not a signatory to the code of conduct, so you can't hold me accountable. Should unregistered persons be allowed to practice in this industry? And I'm sure I'm going to hear all of you say with a reservation, no, because you've just heard you're not a professional. Before that, you probably said no. Point is, big men crying. Do you go to a medical doctor every time when you feel sick? Do you consult an attorney every time you have to enter into a contract, whether it's a lease agreement for your flat or whatever, or you buy a new vehicle? Do you go to a chartered accountant to do all your accounting stuff? Every time, all the time? And if not, why not? Relevance, time, and affordability. So, I want to extend my house, and I need a foundation for my house. There is an unregistered technician who's got 20 years experience. Why can't I use him to design my house foundation? It's about relevance, time. The integrity of the industry is questioned at the moment with recent significant failures. It is further complicated in that parties involved in those complications, they are experienced engineers, suppliers, and contractors. You know, when something goes wrong, then it's always said, you see, it's transformation. That's why I've been told I must finish, and I haven't even finished with the one topic. So I'm going to ask you to vote whether I can carry on or not. Let's get to this. What do you see as radical? Is it the transformation from to that unique body, a new physique, to move out of the informal settlement into a proper house or into a mansion? Is it to get rich? Or is it that transformation from the caterpillar to a beautiful butterfly? What do you see as, not the real part, this is just being radical now, it's not even real. That's our census, that's the population makeup. Ish, someone is hijacking me. I've been hijacked. I'm sorry, I think it's Madam Speaker of Parliament. What's the size of the cake? So the slides that you've missed is the makeup of the sector. 51% of this sector employs black people, or 51% of those in employment in the sector are black. 88% are white registered engineers. Only 12% are black registered engineers. And if you look at the trend over the last 7 years, there's been no change. Public sector income makes up 67% of the total income. So let's get to the radical part. I believe that if we want to be radical, we must set aside, radical about transformation, we must set aside 50% of all public sector work for empowered companies. Rubbish with this BBBBBBBBE. True transformation is in the ownership and control of a company. To make sure that within 10 years from now, that at least 50% of the 10 largest engineering companies in this country are black owned and controlled. Today there's nothing. 20 odd years later, it's still nothing under the top 20. We must make it compulsory, because if you look at that slide on top there, private sector makes up 33% of the total slice of that cake. Parastatals 18%. We must make it compulsory for the private sector to use public sector procurement acts and regulations if they want to do business with government. You said we must be radical. Fronting. With the new regulations that's coming in, fronting is going to be a big challenge in our industry. Those are the definitions of fronting. Look at the penalty for fronting. So in the new BEE Act, there's a penalty for fronting. Okay? Just take note of the penalty. So, you young people, maybe you should sign an oath that you will not continue employment with any company where you believe fronting practices are employed. Note any agreement signed between black and white people within any operations that limits the benefits to South Africa only is a front, because you're only good for black where it counts. This is from a financial point of view. There's a number of my slides that Godfrey's hijacked me on, so that's what's happening to the financials. See what's happened over the last 2 years. Data aging just gets longer. Where the gazetted fee scales are as a minimum and not as a maximum limit, in particular on projects where it's a specific demand for experienced engineers. So what we're saying is that don't use the gazetted scales as the ceiling and give discounts. Who said we can't have that as the minimum and give markup on top of that? Why not? We're selling ourselves short. Guys, I've been voted out here. I do apologize. I need to talk about corruption. Ask the question, does corruption have a color? Why do we have certain of service providers that we use when they talk about the topic of corruption? The photos in that presentation that they use are only black faces. Why? Corruption doesn't have a color. Or it doesn't have to get another name just because it's not black people. So, I leave the presentation with you. The point that I'm making here is that you are entitled to nothing. Get that out of your system. There's some of you that says, because I'm a young professional, I'm entitled to get mentored. I'm entitled to this money. I'm entitled to that. You are entitled to nothing. You will be given nothing. Take ownership. Absorb knowledge. Participate. And stay passionate about this profession. Fun fact. Engineers are the highest paid profession in South Africa. Go do your research. What you're talking about is the reward for effort. I'm not talking about what you're charging out to your client, where lawyers are charged out at 3,000 Rand an hour. I'm talking about what ends up in your pocket. Okay? The margins for practices in this industry is sitting between, one of the slides that Godfrey hijacked, is sitting between 16% about 4 years ago. It's dropped to 11%. That entire effort that you make for 11% return. lawyers get more and others, but yeah. We leave it there. The madam has spoken. It's in your hands. Take control.
Ladies and gentlemen, I normally introduce myself and say I'm Niresh and I'm an engineer, but I suppose I'm in the room of all engineers here, so I'm really proud to be here amongst you, and I'm hoping that through a couple of pointers that I want to share with you, we can collectively energize the session and hopefully the discussions thereafter. So Godfrey put this panel together and asked me to talk about activism, leadership, and then a burning desire in terms of each of you wanting to weigh up or balance, do I open my own business and follow the lead that Clint has suggested, or do I, as is being promoted in many parts of the industry, or do I stay in big business, public sector, and so on? Mine is not for you to give you an answer, but rather to provoke a couple of thoughts. So hopefully that's what I'll cover in this current session. So I tried to, before I get to the whole activism part, decide that, or suggest to each one of us, or each one of you in the room, that as young engineers, you really need to understand yourself clearly. You need to understand your profile, what you want, what defines you, and where you fit in your contribution to society. I think everybody, Clint spoke about entitlement, and everybody in the room speaks about ourselves. Certainly myself, you think about yourself first. But I think an important aspect of what we do has got to revolve around our contribution to society. And I think that's a question that's important for us to all ask. It's really then defining the real issues in the industry: salaries, respect, the need, engineering as a grudge purchase. I mean, these are all sort of things that have come up. Disruption in the engineering sector through digitization, automation, standardization. These are all things that you're going to be faced with. These are all challenges that we're certainly going to have to address. And then lastly, and probably most important, accepting and being willing to accept that success takes time to achieve. Nothing easy or hard work doesn't bring easy rewards, or easy rewards doesn't come without hard work, rather. So we can sit and carry on our existence in the normal way, see nothing, do nothing, hear nothing, and go about our business in a little corner, like most engineers are typically stereotyped as being. Or we can stand up and be counted, things that really matter. So what is activism? I tried to pick out a definition. Activism is an effort to promote direct social, political, economical, and environmental change with the desire to make improvements in society. And then, why be an activist engineer? Activist engineering offers a contrasting method to contemporary engineering practice. This will lead to social justice, ecological protection, and through problem solving, ecological protection through problem solving. The engineering profession will evolve beyond being a profession solely focused on technological and infrastructure development, but rather one where we could change the world. So you can see most engineering is about process. So I tried to take the activism and bring it down to a process. As an activist engineer, one needs to step back from their work and tackle the questions such as, what is the real problem? Does this problem require an engineering solution? Clint's note on relevance. How can I create an authentic alternative? How visionary, or how can I be visionary for the client and the end users? Is my solution innovative and sustainable? Should I just do as I'm being told? Or is my solution a game changer? Leadership. Being an ambassador in the industry, you have to embrace strong leadership. And being a strong leader will allow you to influence, it will allow you to forge teamwork, It will enable you to direct communication, make decisions, foster management, make a contribution to society, drive a specific vision, be ethical, motivate others, and most importantly, take on responsibility. So I sort of thought, what could I leave with you guys? And it was really the path to strong leadership. So I put this slide together in terms of the path as a young engineer that I believe you will travel. It's really about being strong, about being ethical, being honest, and true leaders. It's about navigating through confusion and being clear and taking decisive action. It's using technology and embracing new ways of doing things. It's about promoting hard work and innovative thinking. And most importantly, saying no to corruption. Now, what are the traits of a visionary leader? Or how do I become a visionary leader? It's being imaginative, being open-minded to new ideas, understanding the big picture, being a positive energizer, being focused, present, and mindful, and not being afraid to fail, but to always try again. And most importantly, share your thoughts and your experience. And if I do all of these things, what's the impact of a visionary leader? My belief is it'll lead to enthusiastic behavior and it'll promote active communication. And most importantly, it will lead to an innovation culture, creative ideas, open-minded group of individuals within the industry, inspired and focused organizations, flexible to change, to be lean and mean, and adapt with times, and being future-orientated and not stuck in the mud in old ways of doing things. So we come to the question, are you going to embrace or drive down Employee Street or Entrepreneur Boulevard? So you really have the choice. Do I go into follow the regulations or the regulatory framework of an EME and a QSE and fragment the industry and start up my own business? So on the one hand, you have private practice, you have independence, you set the rules. You choose to work on what you want to. You have no answerability, but you do have some downsides. You have the stress of the organization. You are the organization. Your time is not your own. It does offer you an adrenaline rush. You can create something on your own, so there are positives. And you can grow as fast as you want. It does get lonely. I've been in a small business and we've grown from small businesses. So it does get lonely. On the other hand, joining a corporate does give you the flexibility of having the safety net, of having all of the benefits, working in a secure environment. So you're outside of the economic pressures, you're outside of the economic collapse, the industry downturn, you get paid a salary. You do follow red tape, there's bureaucracy, there's the downside of you work to sets of rules that you don't drive. You're part of an organization. There's systems, there's knowledge, there's structure, there's large projects. There's various fields of expertise. So you're able to draw on mentorship programs, training, and all those things. So there's ups and downs on both those. It's really about you driving what you want and what drives you. So, based on all of those, and based on this list of corporate versus private practice, choose your own adventure. I thank you.